here from AskTheCarExperts YouTube channel, and it's time to do some timing. Timing specifically on a BMW with an M54 engine. This was also going to be the same for the M52TU. I'm doing timing on my M54 because I had the cylinder head off. This engine had an overheat, and I bought it from a previous owner after it was accidentally overheated, and I had to repair the engine block and get the cylinder head machined. And I did a valve job, and I have videos on that entire process. If you're interested, just subscribe and check out my videos. Now, before you start your timing, make sure that you're at top dead center. I already have my pin in right here, right? That's just below the starter in this well. That's where the pin locks in. I've installed both of these camshafts, and I have my cam timing tool on the back at the correct TDC position. Both of these camshafts, these lobes should point to each other. This cover just comes off. See this lobe right here and this lobe right here, and I have that locked in, and I have that, and I have my TDC pin in because I have this all apart and I have the cylinder head off. So now I'm ready to start my timing. Now you do need some special tools to do timing. I picked this up off of Amazon. This has everything I need, including this cam lock gear, but I had another one, so I have that installed right now. But you do need this tool to set the chain position, this tool to set the cups. It comes with the pin, which is nice. That's for the tensioner right here. You can just use that pin. This is a tensioning device that you can use, although a lot of times I just use the chain tensioner slightly screwed in, and usually that is good enough. This is for Vanos activation. This is actually for single Vanos if you have an M52 single Vanos. All right, this is another chain tensioning tool right here. So it comes with a lot of cool stuff. I'll put a link in the description box in case you need timing tools for the M54 or the M52TU, or in fact this actually does the M52 as well. Timing on an M54 is a little bit more complicated actually than even the more modern BMWs. If you follow my tutorial step by step, you can get it done correctly. I have all my timing components here. This I removed from the exhaust side. I put an E on it. This is actually the first piece that you're going to need, is this sprocket right here. Now this tooth wheel has this concave area, and this side is the outside. You want to find the arrow. There's an arrow right here. That arrow, hopefully you can see that right there, that arrow right there has to line up with the cylinder head. All right, let's get started. So there's my arrow right there. I got the camera in front, so this might be a little bit harder, but all right, so here's my timing chain. Make sure that so you got to walk the gear on, but you have to walk it on so that that arrow is pointing to the side of the cylinder head. So if you're off a bit, you got to move it, the tooth, to get it exactly where you need it. All right, so if I tension this with the tensioner, which I'm going to have to do, this arrow has to be lined up to the side of the head here, so I got to go down another tooth. So this part can be a little deceiving because I don't have the tensioner in yet, so you have to remember that this is going to be tensioned, which that's going to be the next step. So realistically, that's the position it's going to be. And the arrow, when it's resting at this point, lines up with my cylinder head, right at the edge. Now, we are at an angle, so you have to keep that in mind when you're looking at this. It can be a little deceiving. So I have my chain tensioner. You have to install a new crush washer. This comes in the head kit. So make sure you grab that and put the new one on. Now the normal instructions say to use the special tool to go ahead and tension this, but I've always found that I can just use the tensioner. So if I just put this in a couple of threads, basically that gives me my 0.5 Newton meters, which is nothing, to take up the slack on the chain, so I can verify that I'm lined up correctly with the first sprocket that I need on the exhaust side. Now, if you're not sure on your positioning of that arrow, take a flat item and you can put it on the side like that, and you can see that's flat against the head, and there's my arrow. So that is the correct spot. And that's just a quick check you can do. All right, the next smartest step you can do is to take some rags and actually place them all in these open holes, because if you drop something, it's gonna be a bad day and you might have to drop the pan. So I'm just gonna cover everything because I'm gonna be working in this area. It does get slippery, and I want to drop any of the studs as I'm doing my timing. I want to be able to protect that. The next step is to take these 3 screw pins here. You can see they have threads on this side, and then there's an extension and threads on this side. It goes this way with the extended side out. The threaded side, where it's flush right here, goes towards the back. They don't go on this outer section, they go on these inners. So there's a little cavity right here, and we want to thread those in to each one of those spots. So we're going to put those in, then we're going to torque this down. And that's why I have the cloth there, because this would be when you would accidentally drop something and it would fall right into the oil sump. And then you'd be dropping the pan on top of all the other work you've already done. Torque spec on these 3 guide pins are 20 Newton meters. And I always just double check them. And you need a 12 millimeter deep socket for these guys right here that I just did to 20 Newton meters. On the inside, the stud area is actually an M7, and that's how you'd verify that that is the correct torque spec. The next step is to install the secondary chain tensioner. It may be apart like mine is right here, but it's easy to rebuild this. So this spring goes in here. This is this guide, this goes here, and then these 2 sandwiched together like this. That's how that works. That's going to go ahead and sit into the bore right here. This goes on this side. Turn this the right way. You can see that there's a cutout half moon right there. And if you put it this way, you're going to hit right there. So that's actually the wrong way. Turn it. And now you can go ahead and compress it the entire way. That's when you get the special tool from your timing kit. It's just this pin. You compress the spring and put your pin in place, and it holds your timing guide down for the installation position. We're ready to go. And then we have the hardware. We're going to do 10 Newton meters on this. Almost missed one. We need this small one too. So these 3 go on top, and this longer one goes in the front facing. So here's my tensioner right here. You really can't put it on the wrong way because it's not going to fit if you have it facing the wrong way. This just sits right on top like that. Here's that long one here. I'm just going to go ahead and get that started. You never want to tighten anything until all of the bolts are in and everything is centered. The 2 longer, secondary longer ones go on the longer part right here. Pretty self-explanatory. Then you have the smaller one which goes right back here. I'll grab the camera and just show you real quick. Alright, so we have these two right here. We have the smaller one right here. Here's our chain tensioner. This is for the front chain that's going to actually do our Vanos adjustments. This is that pin that comes with that nice set that I purchased off of Amazon. And then you have this one right here in the front, which is your longest bolt, which holds the chain tensioner in place. I'm gonna go ahead and torque those down. All right, I'm gonna do a joining torque of 8 Newton meters to start. And I'm gonna finish with 10 Newton meters. Zion, I wish I had some opposable thumbs to help me. Zion says hi. Now just to make it easier, while I was putting this back together, I had zip tied the exhaust components and the intake components separately. So this is my exhaust components over here. So I'm going to go ahead and take the zip tie off, because we need this piece right here next. Alright, so we have our piece right here. You can see this is a thinner side, this is the thicker side, this side is out. You can see right there, there's a notch. See that notch right there? That has to line up with this notch in the camshaft. So this is like another spiral gear right here, and there's a wider gap. So this fits right over the top, and you line up that. You can see that this can move. So you line up the opening with each other just like that right there. All right, now we take this gear right here, and you can see this circle piece right on top. That has to line up with both of these two components, and that's going to slide in once I have everything lined up correctly. And if I'm off a little bit, it won't go in. There we go. And you want to push this in until these bolts right here are located centrally in this bore right there. You can see that's that right there. If I pulled this back out, see how it's moving, right? And I just moved it back that way. And now I push that back in, and I want to be right about central. So that looks pretty good. That's centered right there. And that's my tooth shaft is now engaged right there. So once these teeth are engaged, you want to push the tooth shaft in until not these being central, but these right here. See how that's moving as I turn that? You want those to be centrally located so that we can access these for the next step. So right about, that's a little bit too much, right about there. So you can see I've now have access to 1, 2, and 3 hole, when before, if I rotate this, you see how the whole thing is closed right here. Now I'm just going to push that in again and get my central location right about there. Next, I need this tool right here from my timing kit. Alright, the next step is to use this tool right here. And this was my timing pieces for my intake. This is going to sit like that right there. You can see it doesn't really matter, probably does matter. So you can see I rotated that right there because this larger tooth gap right here has to be facing upright. If you're here, it's the wrong position. This is the slot right there that it goes into, and then here is that larger opening. And then I'm going to take this gear right here. Now take note that this does have a front and back, and you can actually see where the hold down screws were. So I know that this actually is the front. This should be my front, so I have to make sure that these screws right here are facing, or the indents rather, right here are facing outward. And this pivots right here. So now I'm going to take my chain, and I'm going to go ahead and install the chain on this sprocket, which is fixed. Rest it here, and then go ahead and pivot out until we have good tension on both sides like that, and there's no excessive slack. So that's how you set up a secondary chain. Now once this is locked in this position, you don't want to rotate it. You want to make sure it stays in this position, because this is how it has to get installed onto the vanos. So I have my timing tool right here all set. I'm going to take it right from how it is, and that sprocket opening needs to line up with the other sprocket opening on the intake side. So that rests right there, and we just have to get this to sit correctly. There we go. All right, so he has to slide into the guide, this lower guide right here. So you don't have to worry about it being lined up right now as long as you didn't move the chain at all. And you can see that's how your vanos actually works. It's going to be rotating the camshaft within its limitation, and that can adjust with advancing and retarding the timing. So now I have that same keyhole, and I have to line them both up, and that just sits just like that, and we're ready for the next step. Let's do a quick close-up here. You can see, all right, that's everything I set up. Here's that larger gap tooth that has to line up with that gap right there on the intake camshaft. And you can see it slides into this right here. This is that lower chain guide. And then I have this, which is locked in the untensioned position. And that's all that this tool is really used for, actually. But it is a very needed tool to set the timing up correctly. All right, the next step is to take the tooth shaft for the intake side, and I have to do the same thing. I have to line that up with the camshaft and my gearing right here, so you got to find that sweet spot. Of course, I'm doing it with one hand. I'm trying to record at the same time. There we go. All right, so you know you got it when everything slides in correctly. All right, so for this one, it's a little bit different. You can see you have this gap right here where it's protruding. You need to push this in so it's about 1 millimeter, you know, eyeball it. And you want about 1 millimeter of spline still showing, and that's where you stop and you leave it right there. Okay, next I'm going to take my washer right here, and it says front. That is the front, obviously, and that's going to go over those studs right there. The next step is to put these three nuts on that intake side. So again, safety is the most important thing right here, because I don't need to fish these out of the oil pan. So I'm going to go ahead and reinstall my protector rags, and while that's in place, I'm going to go ahead and just get these started. Now, these get torqued to a joining torque of only 5 Newton meters. I'm not sure if my torque wrench actually goes down that low, so I might just gently snug those. Well, I go down to 6.8. I mean, that should really be good enough. So I'm gonna pre-torque these to 6.8. All right, the next step is to take these 3 bolts right here. These are the E8s, right? E-torques. And these are gonna screw in to that halfway gap that we've created on the exhaust side. Again, I'm gonna leave this is the worst one because a little higher chance of dropping it. All right, I'm gonna get all 3 of those started. Now for these, you wanna tighten to 5 Newton meters as well, and then you're supposed to slack them off by half a turn. So I'm just gonna gently snug these down since I can't do 5 Newton meters anyways. Basically, this is like a joining torque once again. 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm going to go half a turn and loosen them all, because we need this gear to be able to turn. Next, we need this thrust washer right here. You can see there's coloring marks on the outside here. This is my outside. This is my inside, and they go over these sleeves, and the loop area here is where we're going to have access to that E8. So you can see this is actually going to slide over once you line it up right. And you get it just right, it just goes right on, just like that. There we go. There it is. You can see this is the E8s right here that we tightened and then backed off. And then this is the dowel right here, and then this is that thrust washer that goes over these 1, 2, 3. It just fits on. Now I have this spring right here with the F on it, and same thing, that's going to go right over those same dowel points, right, with the spring facing that way, right? My F is facing out, and that just rests right in place like that. Now I have the sensor gear right here, and this is also on the exhaust side, and this also has an arrow right here. That arrow also has to face the edge of the cylinder head right there. And that just kind of rests just like that, and if you got everything right, it should actually match up. So you can see here's my gear. There's my arrow, and there's my cylinder head. So that is exactly where I need it to be. All right, now we got to put the 3 nuts on. I'm just going to actually just slide this right here just in case I drop one. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to tighten these down. I'm just going to gently put them on by hand, but do not fully tighten. Now we're going to withdraw this. It should slide out until it reaches an end stop, and it won't be able to come out any farther. Just like that. And now, because we have another tool that's going to fit, and that's going to put these cups in the right position. See how I can't get that out anymore? All right, push it in, push it out, bring it out as far as you can go, and that's where you stop. Now with that fully out, the next step is to depress the chain tensioner and take our pin out and tension the chain up. Next step is just kind of preload the cup, and you tighten these by hand with a little bit of tension, which is going to do a slight preload. But we're not fully tightening these yet. Now we need this special tool from the kit. You want to make sure that your dowels are in place. There's one over there and one here. You do not want to have the gasket, and you want this clean of any oil, grease, or debris. All right, this is actually going to fit over the existing studs, and it's going to fit over the dowels. But right now, as you can see, I can't push that in. There's a reason for that. Now we have to have this fit all the way up against the block. All right, with these loosened up a little bit more, you can actually get this to move. I know they wanted it out about 1 millimeter, but it does have to sit flush with this tool. And now that this sits flush, I have to install the nuts for the studs that hold the tool in place. All right, so I only have 3 protruding ones right here, so I'm going to go ahead and put those on. 1, 2, and 3. So these 3 right here, I'm going to zip these on. I'm just going to gently snug these down. And that's going to hold everything in place. All right, with this special tool, we have access to these nuts right here. We are going to torque them again to the 6.8, which really should be the 5 Newton meters. And then the secondary torque is 10 Newton meters, but the 6.8 was a little bit too much for being able to have this cup move, so I did loosen them slightly, but it didn't change anything with me doing that. You see this tool has this access hole, And that's how we get to all of these. And this is not an M7 bolt, it's like an M6, and the M6 is only max of 10 Newton meters. So we're doing our initial torque to the 6.8, is what my torque wrench goes to. And then we will torque them to 10 Newton meters after my initial torque right here. Okay, I'm going to switch this to 10 Newton meters and go ahead and do these one more time, bring them up to 10. Okay, I always double check them. Then I'm going to do 10 also on the nuts. Now I'm going to do the e-torques, which is the M7, and that says 20 Newton meters. I'm going to start with 15. And then bump it up to 20. And now I'm going to double check all of my other nuts. They should be 10 Newton meters. Alright, now at this point I take my cam locks off. I leave the timing tool on. I'm going to screw this holder in right here. That's for that bracket where the thermostat goes, just so it has support on this part as well. And I'm going to pull the pin back so we can turn the engine over 2 times. Alright, so I got my TDC pin pulled out. Let's put a zip tie on in cylinder 1 so we can watch the piston. Now you turn the engine over by hand, clockwise. It's always good to go slow to make sure you don't feel any binding or anything odd. We have to go around once, coming back up. And going back down again. And then we're coming back up again. And my lobes right here are going to start getting to the point where they're going to be facing each other. And then I need to put my TDC pin back in. And as I'm approaching TDC, put a little bit of pressure on the pin. There it is, clink, locked in. Should have no movement either direction. Yep, I am locked in. And now, we put the timing tools back on, and if it drops on correctly, our timing is good. So we have our timing tools here. And that sits nice and flush. And then on the other side, lock that back on. And it's perfect. it's perfect. So after the 2 revolutions and we're back up at TDC and our cams are facing each other again, you can see back here I have the timing tools on. They sit flush back in this corner here and in this corner here and in the center. That means our timing is set and we're good to go. You know, at this point we can go ahead and turn in our chain tensioner the rest of the way, because we just had it in that pre-tension stage. You don't want to forget to tighten this and then have everything done and start your car. You will just dump oil out of the side of this and you'll be like, what the hell's going on? And you realize that you left the tensioner loose. Ask me how I know. It's a long time ago though. All right, let's continue. I put my baffle on for my intake. I'm gonna get the Zion here off it. Alright, baffle's on. Next I'm gonna take off the special tool we used to set up the Vanos. You want to make sure you have a new Vanos gasket and that you seat that over the dowels correctly. Alright, I kept my Vanos wrapped up in some Ziploc bags to keep the dirt and dust out of it. I do want to make sure that the sealing surface is clean. So I just want to wipe this down here. Looks like there was a small leak at some time underneath here from that gasket. I'm going to spray a little brake clean and clean the sealing surface so it's free of oil. Alright, there we go. I do need to replace this sensor because there was oil in the connector. If oil is leaking out of the connector, that can run through your harness and up to your engine computer. So this exhaust sensor I'm going to be replacing. I'm just going to leave it in place for now. I think I ordered one. I have to double check. I got a whole giant pile of parts over there. Alright, somebody put some RTV right there. The solenoids look good. So I'm good to go ahead and install this. Alright, to get this in, usually it takes a little bit of a wiggle and a jiggle to get it to mate right there, but as long as you're on the dowels, you're good to go. I'm going to start by putting the 10mm nuts on, and then you do have this one right here as well, and that one has that additional bracket, which is this bracket right here. It's basically like an engine hanger. So the next step is to put all of these 10mm nuts on all of these studs. I'm going to go ahead and install these. Now there is one down here a little bit further in, right next to the exhaust camshaft sensor as well. So a lot of times you need a bit of an extension. You can't quite get your fingers on that one. Now a rule of thumb on this for torque spec would be 10 Newton meters. This doesn't take much. This is just sealing that gasket up against the face of the cylinder head. So I just kind of gently snug them all and then finish off with 10 Newton meters. So this bracket right here, if your if your thermostat is installed, the way that this goes is this way right here. It goes right along here, and I still have to install my thermostat. I'm going to be replacing the water pump and the thermostat. Alright, so I'm going to run this in too. I'm going to go ahead and torque all of these to 10 Newton meters. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now the next step in the Vanos installation are these T30s. Now these T30s are left-hand threads. So I'm gonna line that up, and I need to turn them counterclockwise to tighten. And this connects the vanos to those cups. So lefty tighty. That one's snug. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Could use a little extension. There we go, lefty tighty. Now to torque this, I have to remember to switch this to off. And the torque spec is once again 10 Newton meters. Alright, so this kit that I got comes with these new plugs for where we tightened those E-Torxes. So that would be the next step, is to install these, and then we want to reinstall these caps, and you want to put new O-rings on these. Alright, to put these in, you need a very small or a 90-degree angled pair of pliers, needle nose. And I'm going to put a little bit of oil around the new seal. And these basically just push in, and that's it. The ones in the kit look okay. The seals aren't as robust as the BMW one. Should be fine, I would imagine, though. The other ones look pretty tired, so. That one's a little bit deeper. So you just want to make sure that those are fully seated. All right, good to go. The next step is to install these seal plugs. These are not left-hand threads, so these are righty-tighty. These have a bit more torque on them as well. All right, switch back to on, and the torque spec on these, might have to take my extension off here, are 50 Newton meters. 50. Alright, now I got a little bit of RTV right here from the previous valve cover. I'm just going to take a razor blade and clean that off when I'm putting my new valve cover gasket on. You do want to put a little bit of RTV in these two seams right here. Alright, not bad. So now I got to figure out where I want to go for my next step. There's still quite a bit of installation required. I think putting the valve cover gasket on just for safety reasons, and I could throw a little bit of oil in there and button that up, hook up the connections for your vanos solenoids right here, but I have all the harness over. I do want to replace the oil filter housing gasket while I'm here, so I'm going to want to do that with the intake off. It's just going to be a little bit easier. I do have to take off the belt and the alternator to do that, or at least move it out of the way. So that's going to be something that I'm going to want to do before I go ahead and install the intake manifold and all of those components. But I think just for safety reasons, the best thing to do would be to put the valve cover on.